Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take some pretty complex ideas and, well, make them clear and useful for you.
That's the plan.
Today, we're looking at a really fascinating period, the Renaissance, and specifically how they thought about music. It wasn't just entertainment back then, was it?
No, not at all. It was seen as this fundamental force for healing, for understanding the universe itself, really.
So this is our deep dive topic, the Renaissance revival of music therapy. We'll look at the philosophy, the medicine, the culture.
Right, trying to get a handle on why music had such a central and ambitious role in how educated Europeans thought back then.
Okay, Renaissance. We often think art, rediscovering ancient Greece and Rome.
Exactly. And that rediscovery absolutely included how they viewed music and health. They saw themselves as bringing back something vital, contrasting it with the Middle Ages, which they kind of viewed as, well, a break in that classical tradition.
An interruption.
Yeah. But it wasn't just copying the ancients. When it came to music and healing, the Renaissance really elevated it. It gained this philosophical weight, this cultural resonance, especially among intellectuals.
More so than before or since, maybe. Except perhaps some modern stuff.
Arguably, yeah. Maybe some corners of the New Age movement touch on similar ideas, but the Renaissance integration was pretty unique.
So what was the big shift? What changed from the medieval approach to music therapy?
The key thing was pulling together two ancient Greek ideas more tightly.
Yeah.
Music's ethical power, its effect on character and emotion, and its astrological significance.
Okay. Ethical and astrological.
Right. Thinkers like Pythagoras, Plato, they understood music affects ethos, our inner state, but they also saw it mirroring the cosmos, the universal harmony. The Renaissance really fused these two ideas.
So music's power came from reflecting the universe's own structure, and aligning with that was healing.
That's the core idea. They believed you could literally tune yourself to the cosmos through music.
How did they bring those ideas together so strongly?
Well, they built on that Pythagorean Platonic foundation. And actually, Islamic scholars had already done a lot of work connecting planets, signs, tones, elements, even bodily humors.
Ah, so that knowledge existed.
It did.
Yeah.
But it didn't fully permeate European thought until those texts got translated into Latin during the Renaissance.
Got it. Access to information. But what about Aristotle? Didn't he have a different view that was more popular in the Middle Ages?
That's a really important point, yes. Aristotle was more skeptical about the literal music of the spheres.
Yeah.
The idea that planets make actual harmonious sounds.
Right.
So medieval music therapy, influenced more by Aristotle, tended to focus on just regulating moods, the accidents of the soul, less about cosmic alignment.
Okay, managing your internal state, not necessarily plugging into the universe.
You got it. Then, around the mid-15th century, Plato comes roaring back. This Platonic revival gets absorbed into something called occult philosophy.
Occult philosophy.
Yeah.
Sounds mysterious.
Yeah, well, not quite like we think of a cult today. Back then, it was more about understanding the occulted connections and influences in nature. A serious intellectual framework.
And what fed into this occult philosophy?
Various things. Arabic texts became more available, especially after the Reconquista in Spain. And the Jewish mystical tradition, Kabbalah, with its focus on numbers and hidden meanings, that played a part too. Several thinkers were involved, but one name really stands out.
Who's the key player here?
Marsilio Ficino, a truly remarkable figure in 15th century Florence. Physician, philosopher, and a musician.
All three, wow.
Yeah. He became the absolute linchpin of this renewed focus on music therapy. They even called him the second Orpheus.
A second Orpheus, after the mythical Greek musician. That says a lot about his perceived power, doesn't it?
It really does. Shows the immense respect he commanded.
So what was Ficino's specific angle? What made his ideas on music therapy so groundbreaking?
His ambition was huge. He genuinely believed that by carefully choosing musical tones, aligning them with the stars and their influences, he could actually treat both physical and mental problems. Not just soothe, but heal.
Aligning tones with stars.
He was digging into newly rediscovered classical texts, late antique writings, and synthesizing them. It was much more ambitious than the medieval approach. The big idea was, music isn't just pleasant sound, it's a tool to harmonize the individual with the cosmos.
So he was reading these old texts with new eyes, essentially.
Definitely. And his thinking really shaped the whole conversation about music and healing afterwards. Though, interestingly, his ideas caught on more with these occult philosophers than, say, mainstream university doctors or music theorists.
Why was that?
Well, The more traditional scholars often stuck to older ideas, biblical precedents, earlier Pythagorean concepts maybe. Ficino and the occult philosophers were the ones really innovating, especially in reinventing this Pythagorean cosmology, the universe built on musical ratios.
Sounds like they were really pushing the envelope.
They were. And it's important to remember, these ideas, which might seem a bit out there to us now, actually had links to the beginnings of the scientific revolution and the religious upheavals of the time, too.
That's fascinating. So Ficino's astrological model, how did it work in practice? Or in theory, I guess.
He basically layered his astrological ideas onto the older concept of music regulating the non-naturals.
The non-naturals.
Yeah, things like air quality, diet, exercise, sleep, emotions, things believed to directly affect health. Ficino added this cosmic astrological dimension, and this framework was incredibly influential, lasting until the late 18th century.
That's centuries. What eventually replaced it?
More mechanical and neurological explanations for music's effects started emerging. But Ficino's vision of music, tuning us to the cosmos, had real staying power.
Were other major figures influenced by him?
Oh, yes. Robert Burton, who wrote the massive The Anatomy of Melancholy.
I know that work.
He was heavily influenced by Ficino. It shows how philosophers, maybe even more than doctors, really engaged with these ideas. We hear anecdotes about Ficino's methods working, but university-trained physicians didn't really pick it up widely. It seemed to have thrived more in high culture.
So more intellectual and artistic than mainstream medical practice.
Seems that way. And it definitely spilled over into the arts, especially literature. You see this theme of cosmic musical harmony all through French literature of the period, for example.
Can you give an example?
Sure. There was a writer named Du Bartas. Maybe not a household name now, but hugely popular then.
Okay.
His big work, Semaines, basically portrayed the poet as a modern Orpheus, using verse to reharmonize the whole of creation.
Wow. So not just a metaphor.
They didn't see it as just a metaphor. It reflected a genuine belief in the power of harmony, musical, poetic to influence reality. Dismissing these as merely symbolic might miss how deeply these beliefs ran.
Right. These cultural expressions reinforce the ideas. And it wasn't only about cosmic harmony, right? Music was also used for more personal problems, like love sickness.
Oh, absolutely. Love, for the Renaissance mind, was this immense power. It could be the glue holding the universe together, the bond of the world.
But also destructive.
Potentially, yes. So music became a vital tool for dealing with the intense emotions of love, especially unrequited or painful love.
A Renaissance cure for heartbreak.
Sort of. You see it everywhere. Emblem books, paintings, decorations on instruments, music books. Music could be seductive, yes, but it could also be a distraction, a way to release intense emotion or even elevate passionate love towards something more spiritual.
It's amazing how connected it all was. But you said the Platonic model wasn't the only game in town.
Correct. There was another, quite different approach that emerged in the 16th century, mostly associated with a very colorful figure, Paracelsus.
Paracelsus, right. The name rings a bell. What was his take?
Paracelsus broke sharply from the standard Galenic theory of humors, the four bodily fluids that Platonists linked to human harmony, musica humana.
Okay, no humors. What did he focus on?
Salt, sulfur, and mercury. Those were his primary bodily constituents. And he saw diseases as distinct entities with external causes, not just imbalances. His treatments were more like, well, proto-homeopathy, using remedies that resembled the illness.
Oh, a whole different medical world.
Pretty much. But interestingly, Paracelsus did still believe in the microcosm link, the human body reflecting the universe. And he acknowledged spiritual forces, and that belief itself could make you sick.
So some common ground, maybe?
Some, yes. But given his somewhat radical religious ideas and his focus on alchemy and medicine, you wouldn't necessarily expect him to emphasize music.
But he did.
Surprisingly, yes. In an early work, he explicitly says music is a cure for melancholy, for morbid imagination, and that it can even drive away evil spirits used in witchcraft.
Drive away spirits. That is different. What was his logic?
It's quite unique. He had this doctrine of signatures, the idea that cures often resemble the disease, and that God provides remedies locally. He argued music affects the mind, and so does mental disturbance. There's a resemblance.
Okay.
So specific types of music could counteract specific mental issues, almost like a local herb for a local ailment. And his belief about spirits. Yeah, that was pretty distinct from the Platonists, who generally didn't think music worked directly on demons.
So even with a completely different system, music still had a place. It really shows how pervasive the belief in music's power was, doesn't it?
It really does. The sheer variety of thought is striking.
Okay, let's circle back to Ficino, our second Orpheus's. You mentioned his deep dive into Plato. How did that directly shape his approach to healing?
Ficino's Platonism led him to a very holistic view, using what he called natural magic, the ultimate goal. Harmonize the individual human soul with the world soul.
The world soul.
Yeah, this kind of intermediary cosmic spirit linking the divine to the material world. Music, for Ficino, was the best tool to make that connection, to achieve that harmony.
So music bridges the gap between us and the cosmos. Did people feel that when he played?
Apparently so. His friends and contemporaries constantly compared him to Orpheus. Poliziano, the poet, said Ficino's lyre was even better than Orpheus's at bringing back true Eurydice, meaning Platonic wisdom.
Wow. And Lorenzo de' Medici thought Orpheus himself had returned.
That's the story. It shows the incredible impact he had. Even early on, Cosimo de' Medici apparently saw his destiny was healing souls, unlike his father who healed bodies.
And that led to the Platonic Academy?
Exactly. Cosimo set it up and tasked Ficino with translating Plato and also the Corpus Hermeticum, those ancient texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus.
So the Academy was Ficino Central.
Pretty much. And even before tackling Hermes, Ficino had translated the Orphic hymns. He felt their power. He tells this story about singing a hymn to Cosmos, a play on Cosimo's name, just before getting news of Cosimo's patronage.
A meaningful coincidence.
Ficino saw it as heavenly inspiration. This belief in interconnectedness, in signs, and aligning with higher forces that was fundamental to his natural magic.
It sounds like he saw the world as deeply symbolic.
Very much so. And astrology for him wasn't about rigid fate. It was a symbolic language for self-understanding, for seeing the divine work within us. He even reinterpreted his own difficult Saturn placement as positive, linked to contemplation, purification.
Finding the positive spin, astrologically speaking.
Exactly. He saw the cosmos as alive, the planets as divine beings reflecting the ultimate one, as above, so below was key. The human soul mirrors the universe. And music, musica mondana, the harmony of the spheres. Well, audible music was its echo, the best way to tune in.
Music as an echo of heavenly harmony. Where did that specific idea come from? Plato again?
Plato's Timaeus, absolutely. Contemplating the stars, listening to music. Plato saw these as ways to grasp cosmic order and fix our own inner dissonance. He even has this creation myth, where the universe is built using musical ratios octave, fourth, fifth.
The building blocks of the cosmos are musical intervals.
That's the essence, perfect harmony in the heavens, but down here it gets mixed with matter, with the complexities of the human soul. Ficino also leaned heavily on Plotinus, the Neoplatonist.
Plotinus.
Yeah, his idea of the anima mundi, the world soul, animating everything, bridging the divine mind and the material world. This flow of spiritual energy, the circuitus spiritualis, connects everything, and we access it through our own spiritus.
Our spiritus, like our spirit.
Kind of a subtle body and airy substance linking soul and physical body.
Mm-hmm.
Astrology then becomes a way to understand and work with the planetary energies flowing through the spiritus within us.
Okay, so the world soul facilitates the magic, the connection.
Precisely. That's the key to sympathetic magic in this view. Everything is connected back to the divine source, resonating through these sparks of divinity. Plotinus saw magic as creating meaningful connections, using mirroring devices, natural phenomena, or things like prayers, music, invocations.
Intention seems really key here.
Crucial. The attitude, the focused intent of the magician could influence the irrational parts of the soul, bring it into harmony. The stars don't have independent wills, they're part of the flow. The natural magician, like Ficino, taps into that flow, directs it beneficially.
How? Through affinity? Timing?
All of the above.
Yeah.
Affinity, astrological timing, careful preparation, and music. Musica instrumentalis, both instrumental and vocal, was the prime vehicle.
To harmonize the individual soul, the musica humana.
Yes, and connected to the cosmic dance.
Yeah.
Ficino was very clear this natural magic wasn't about dark arts or demons. It was about using natural means, music, herbs, talismans, focused thought, to draw down heavenly benefits for health and well-being. Living itself becomes magical if you cultivate the right inner vision, use imagination.
So his Orphic singing wasn't just performance, it was active magic.
Absolutely. It was the earthly echo of cosmic harmony, meant to harmonize the soul via the spiritus. It required a different way of seeing, beyond just cause and effect, recognizing participation in the cosmos. Plotinus urged cultivating this deeper perception.
Almost like a ritual.
Definitely had ritualistic elements. Focused desire, conscious connection, using imagination and invocations to blend your spiritus with the cosmic flow. They drew on figures like Iamblichus, who talked about ineffable works, and Pletho on hymns for self-purification. The heart was the center of this divine energy.
So it was emotional, heartfelt, not just intellectual.
Yes. Ficino used language, like a musician uses sound, to move the mind beyond the purely rational, to convey a sense of that higher harmony.
So for Ficino, music therapy healed body and mind by restoring this inner harmony.
That was the fundamental belief. He wrote about how sound and song stimulate imagination, affect the heart, influence humors, even move limbs. He used his lyre therapeutically himself and reported successes among his friends.
We have accounts of this.
We do. Anecdotes of cures, and Bishop Campana wrote this vivid description of Ficino improvising, totally captivated by the music.
It sounds like it was a lived practice, not just theory. What about this divine frenzy idea?
Ah, the furor divinus. That comes from Plato too. Divine inspiration or madness seen in poets, priests, prophets, lovers. Plato thought this state of, well, spiritual possession was needed to convey deep truths.
And Ficino applied it to musicians.
He argued musical frenzy was the outward sign of these other divine madnesses, which really elevated the musician's status. He thought Orpheus himself experienced all four kinds, with love as the root power.
Love as the ultimate divine madness.
In his view, yes. And his concept of platonic love wasn't just intellectual. It was a deep bond, rooted in a shared love for God, for the divine.
So the truly inspired musician is channeling something divine.
That's the idea. Which brings us back to the Orphic hymns. They were absolutely crucial for Ficino.
These ancient Greek hymns, why were they so potent in his system?
His own student, Pico della Mirandola, wrote about their power in natural magic, but only if used with the right music and intention. They saw the hymns as symbolic keys, unlocking higher insights, transforming sensory experience into spiritual understanding.
What were they like?
Basically, lists of epithets for different gods, with ritual instructions. They were linked to ancient mystery religions. For Renaissance Platonists, Orpheus wasn't just a musician. He was a theologian, a founder of mysteries, a source of primal wisdom.
A direct line to ancient spiritual authority.
Exactly. Ficino translated them early on, sang them himself to his lyre. It was seen as connecting directly to that powerful lineage.
So performing the hymns was a magical act.
Yes. In his practical advice on fitting one's life to the heavens, Ficino outlines this holistic magic, talismans, herbs, sense matter, but music is paramount for tempering the psyche. And your attitude, your intention is key.
His personal connection shone through.
That seems to be the case. He believed if the speaker or singer is deeply moved, the listener will be too. He gave specific rules for composing or improvising astrological music.
Rules? Like what?
7 steps, corresponding to the 7 planets, matching words, harmonies, tones to specific planetary influences. Natural things were thought to carry a planetary influxus, a divine energy. Music could gain heavenly strength by mirroring the stellar patterns.
You had to match the music to the planet and the person.
Ideally, yes. Consider the person's birth chart, their dominant planets. Ficino admitted it was hard to get the tones exactly right, suggesting you needed diligence and divine fortune intuition.
So intuition played a role too.
Definitely. The right music opens the performer's spirit to the heavenly influx, affecting performer and listeners. He even described the sound quality of each planet.
Different sounds for different planets.
Sort of. Saturn, Mars, Moon were more like voices or sounds. Jupiter, Venus, Apollo, the Sun, Mercury were associated with music or songs. Invoking a planet with the right music at the right time attracted its gifts. Even prayers, if emotionally charged and well composed, acted like songs.
And this affected the mind on multiple levels.
Yes, imagination, reason, the contemplative mind. It created this psychic space for spiritual healing.
It's an incredibly rich system. Did he get into the nitty-gritty of music theory, intervals, chords?
His main book, Liber de Vita, is a bit vague on specifics. But in a letter, The Principles of Music, he does connect astrological aspects, the angles between planets to musical intervals, citing Hermes Trismegistus.
Okay, so he made direct links.
Yes. He describes consonances, might have been influenced by contemporary theorists. He gives these really vivid descriptions of discords and concords, seeing the octave itself as mirroring the soul's journey. He talks about general, physical, and astronomical causes of harmony.
Comparing planetary angles to musical intervals.
Exactly. Though his system differed a bit from the older one by Ptolemy. He saw dissonances like the 7th interval or the opposition aspect as embodying tension, but also the potential for resolution, which is a powerful metaphysical idea too.
And how did he actually play this music? What instrument?
Well, sadly, no sheet music survives, so it's speculation. But Italy had a strong tradition of improvisatory singers, improvising poetry with accompaniment. The lira da braccio, an early violin-like instrument, is often suggested as his Orphic lyre.
Because Orpheus is often shown with a lyre.
Right, in art from the period. A harp is another possibility, based on a bust of Ficino, or maybe a lute, since there are references to him using a plectrum.
So probably singing, accompanying himself, improvising.
That's the general picture, yes. Self-accompanied, single melody line, semi-improvised, setting Orphic hymns or his own texts.
Highly personal and expressive. Do we have any letters or anecdotes showing him using this magic in daily life?
Yes, there's a great letter to his friend Giovanni Cavalcanti. Ficino playfully uses the Orpheus myth, saying he prayed to Apollo with his lyre to soften his friend's stony will to get him to visit. He even jokes about using Zoroaster's magic if Apollo fails.
Huh. So it was woven into his relationships.
Completely. The charm, the persuasion, it's all rooted in that magical worldview. Another fantastic example is his letter to Lorenzo de' Medici that went with Botticelli's Primavera.
The painting.
Yes, Ficino uses it to encourage Lorenzo towards self-knowledge, understanding his inner cosmic forces, embracing Venus in his upcoming marriage. It's this beautiful blend of humanism and eloquent astrology, framing personal life within the grand cosmic scheme.
It really pulls it all together. The Renaissance view of music wasn't just theory. It was this integrated system: cosmology, philosophy, healing, art, personal life, all connected by harmony, with Ficino right at the center.
Absolutely. Their understanding of music therapy, rooted in Plato and this occult philosophy championed by Ficino, it was just incredibly ambitious, aiming for harmony between the person, the cosmos, the divine.
So thinking about all this, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does that profound Renaissance belief in music's power to shape the soul, heal the body, connect us to the universe, how does that compare to how we think about music and well-being today?
Right. What can we maybe learn or relearn from looking back at this incredibly rich perspective on sound, mind, and cosmos?
Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.